Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Protestant street preacher, Pastor Arthur Pawlowski, spent about 4 months in America doing a speaking tour, trying to rally people of faith to stand up for said faith against the lockdowners. He did in his home community of Calgary when police entered his place of worship in advance of a service, because it was violative of the lockdown strictures du jour at the time. Well, as he returned to Canada after his speaking tour in America,
what happened?
Greeted by police again, recently on Laura Ingram's show to describe his situation and the jail time that he's facing and why.
I mean, it's a total insanity. I came to the United States with a simple warning. Look what they're doing to me. If you will not rise up and come to our help, you're next. I mean, they came for me. Be sure of it. They're coming for you as well. So I was on a speaking tour for 4 months, and I was told by my attorneys that there are no pending charges, that there is no warrants for my arrest. I decided to come back, and of course, I landed in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, only to be greeted by masked gangsters, because I can't even say they're officers of the law. There is no law and order anymore in my beloved Canada. I was told I am under arrest on 2 warrants for my arrest, one for officiating a church service in June and another one for not wearing a mask. 2 criminal charges, and I was taken to police custody. The police officers, like bandits, were hiding in a customs building. The vehicles behind, we could not see them. People that came to greet me were not allowed to come. They were kept hundreds of yards away. The Canadian authorities didn't want anyone to film their behavior. Now I'm facing 4 years prison for my previous charges and 2 criminal charges, potentially 2 more prison years.
6 years for officiating a church service and not wearing a mask. Pawlowski, Polish, of Polish extraction, describes how reminiscent what's happening in Canada is to the days of Poland being behind the Iron Curtain when he grew up.
You're 100% right. I grew up behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of the Soviets. What they're doing today is identical to what I remember growing up. You see, when I landed after 4 months, not being in my own house, I wanted to hug my wife and kiss my children that were waiting for me. That was denied to me. I was handcuffed like a common criminal, like a terrorist, Al-Qaeda's most wanted, taken to police, thrown into solitary confinement like a criminal. I was not allowed to see my wife, not allowed to hug my children. I mean, that's exactly what the communists did. That's exactly what the Gestapo did before. They wanted to break me. They want to show the whole world, you see what we do with those that dare to speak against our tyranny. If you will follow the footsteps of Pastor Arthur Pawlowski, you're next. So my message is very simple. They did it to me, and they're still doing this to me. Come to the rescue. Rise up, America. Rise up, Canadian patriots. It's time to push this great evil away. Or if you will not do it, you're next.
And again, even though we have constitutional protections here, they don't enjoy in Canada. We saw what happened during the height of the lockdowns with de Blasio threatening to shutter synagogues permanently. We've saw evangelical churches have to battle in court to allow for services, and so many churches fold into the state and just become sentinels of the state. So what he's saying, I think, is very real. Add this from a secular perspective from the New York Times. How about this? Just in terms of what have we done to ourselves?
Yeah.
An examination of hundreds of health departments around the country shows the nation may be less prepared for the next pandemic than it was for the current one. State and local public health departments across the country have endured not only the public's fury, but widespread staff defections, burnout, firings, unpredictable funding, and a significant erosion in their authority to impose the health orders that were critical to America's early response to the pandemic. Yeah, even from the New York Times perspective, with that loaded language and their pro-lockdown bias. Again, from whether as a matter of secular state governance or as a matter of living as free and faithful people, what have we done to ourselves over the last 19 months? For more on the topic, we're pleased to be joined by our old friend, former United States Senator Jim Demint. He's chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute, and he's written a new book, a novel this time, going the fictional route, Satan's Dare. Senator Demint, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan, and it's good to be with you and Amy this morning. And I enjoyed listening to the first part. I guess I should say I was terrified by what's happening to that pastor. But this book, Satan's Dare, while it is a novel, is about truth. It's about the truth of the Bible, and that science actually proves it. It's a love story of how people deal with tragedy, such as this pastor who's having to deal with jail time, and how do we deal with that in this world, and why does God allow it? The book is not political. The name of the book, Satan's Dare, came from the first chapter of Job, where Satan dares God to take away Job's blessing. And I think Job stands for every human being that ever lives. And when Job resisted and kept his faith, he defeated Satan in a sense. And the reason that's important today is I feel like, am I still on here?
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, okay. I thought, sorry, someone was trying to call in here. So, but the reason I wrote the book is I see that Christians are losing confidence in the truth of the Bible. They're not able to defend the basic concepts of creation, that God does exist, that science doesn't disprove it. And I think America is declining because the Christian church is declining. And so what you were talking about before I came on is very relevant to the underlying purpose of this book. While it is a love story, I think it's a great read. People who've read it tell me it did more to confirm their faith than anything they've ever read. The point I'm trying to make as someone who still works in the political sphere is America was founded on Judeo-Christian ideas that came from the Bible. We can't expect to continue a country if we throw the Bible out of schools, if we throw it out of public discourse, and we're not even allowed to talk about the principles in it without being accused of hate speech or whatever the woke movement is doing today. But again, Satan's Dare, I think I've worked on it for over 10 years. And it's the most important thing I've ever done, and I think any Christian who reads it will come away with a confirmed belief that the Bible is true, and I think any skeptic who reads it will have to face the facts that God had to create this world, and there is a sovereign God who is running things.
Well, don't you think, during the pandemic, Christianity, I always thought, was about running to help those who are sick and who are in need. And instead, people masked up and even stayed away from healthy people during that time. Were you surprised by that?
Yeah, it's almost like a test. Can they force citizens to comply with things? And the big thing right now, and I just had a meeting with Senator Mike Lee, who's leading the effort to stop the funding of this vaccine mandate, because the government, the federal government, doesn't have the authority to say that you have to get this particular medicine or you can't work, but it's doing it, and the corporations are following the lead there. And we've got a situation now in the country is you've got to take this medicine or you can't work, you can't support your family. And I think Americans are going to have to say, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to have to stand up. And hopefully there'll be some companies that push back, employees that push against their companies. But this is a huge move. Mike Lee, he was a constitutional scholar, said we haven't had anything like this in America with the federal government overreaching and taking this kind of power in any of our lifetimes. And so we have to take this seriously. particularly as Christians. One of the things that disturbed me when I was in the House and the Senate is to find out that sometimes, as many as 40 or 50% of people in evangelical churches don't even vote. But we have to get folks not only to vote, but to come out like they're doing in places around the country to school board meetings and demand that the things that are being taught need to be good for education and good for the children. There's a lot going on, and I've never seen so many things coming at us at once as I see now. As Americans and particularly as Christians.
Yeah, the lines between Caesar and God have been blurred, haven't they? If not God erased altogether in certain quarters. And not just with respect to some of these policy fights, but to who we are as a people. We had a mom on earlier in the show who's got a 19-year-old autistic son. They were confronted in a grocery store line by a manager telling the autistic son to wear his mask. He's got her autistic son, he's got a medical exemption. It's difficult for people with autism to be masked up and so forth. And this manager made a real spectacle of this mom and her son, and she's standing in a grocery line with dozens of other people. Nobody says anything. An even more egregious case out of Philadelphia. Man charged with raping a woman on a commuter train just outside of Philadelphia, who he harassed for more than 40 minutes, while multiple people held up their phones to record the assault without ever intervening. No one intervened.
No one helped.
He accosted her. He started to grope her. He ultimately raped her, and no one on that commuter train intervened.
And she was crying for help too, by the way.
We have become rather barbaric. I mean, I understand the nature of man is barbaric, is a sin, but I mean, and then maybe this has been exacerbated during the pandemic. This barbarism that we sort of wave away with our sentimentality, with our sloganeering and our tweeting and so on and so forth. But we are cowards. We have become a very cowardly nation. There are exceptions, but in terms of trend lines, that's where I see it happening.
Well, you're right. There's so much intimidation, and now it's hard for one person to stand up without being taken down by thousands, if not millions, of people on social media platforms. And that's why we have to stand together. That's why church bodies have to stand together. I found when I was in office that oftentimes if I took a strong stand on a moral issue that was consistent with biblical ideas, I didn't find pastors lining up to support me because there's so much intimidation now, and we just have to we have to stand up and accept that there's a price to pay for freedom, and it may be our time as a people that we have to push back against all these mandates and lockdowns and vaccine requirements. I'm not anti-vaccine, but I think it's just something the government should not be doing, is telling people they have to take a medicine. And again, we have the left has become very not only anti-American but anti-God, and this is something that should unite the large majority of Americans who love this country, love the principles it was founded on. They believe that faith and freedom are connected, and we need Christian leaders. We need a strong Christian church. And again, that's my motivation for Satan's Dare, is we have to have at least a remnant in this country who is convinced that the Bible is true, that God created this earth, that it's sovereign, that no nation can rise without God's hand on it. And this is just America's time. And you're going to hear more from a lot of us about this idea of the American movement because the left has become so anti-American and distorting our history. But a big part of this movement is going to be that this country was built on Judeo-Christian ideas. And I hope that your listeners today will take the time to at least look at the Amazon page of Satan's Dare. Some of the comments we've gotten from people like Josh McDowell, who has been a great Christian leader for a long time, said there's more truth in this book than any nonfiction he's ever read. And so, again, it's kind of my life's work at this point. That's why I'm pushing it a little more than the political books I've written, because I think the platform that a lot of us have to take now is is God and country.
We're happy to push it with you. He is former South Carolina Senator Jim Demint, chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute. The book, Satan's Dare, it's a novel. Pick it up. Satan's Dare is the book. Jim Demint, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you both. Great to be with you again.
Thank you. God bless. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's